Ask the crowd. Ask the crowd.
Welcome to the Ask the Crowd podcast, where top experts answer your business questions. And now, your host, serial entrepreneur and founder of Crowdsourcia, Mike Volkan.
Ask the crowd. Ask the crowd.
Welcome to Ask the Crowd, where top experts answer your business question. Each episode features one question answered by multiple experts so you can get a different range of perspectives. To ask your own questions, simply use the Twitter hashtag AskTheCrowdPodcast or contact us at crowdsourcia.com. And now it's time to introduce our expert panelists today. Today we have on two experts. One, Matthew Thorpe. Matthew has over 10 years in design and 8 years in consulting experience. Matthew enjoys the challenges that arise with the diversity of working with startups, corporations, and individuals. He has spent the last 2 years assisting in the marketing and advertising division for Great Expressions Dental Centers for all the 200 offices they have nationally. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And also we have back a frequent guest, Robert Ritch. He has founded and successfully exited 4 multi-million-dollar businesses. He is the CEO and chairman of the board of Secured Equity Group, a venture capitalist and private equity firm that has completed over $1 billion in transactions. Rob has completed deals with Bain Capital, with Trump, and Berkshire Hathaway. Welcome back to the show, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
All right, this should be a great show. The topic of the show is what is the best advice for a startup CEO? Now, I have done 3 startups myself. I'm currently on my 4th, and I still consider myself a startup CEO, even though I've built and sold 3 companies. But I'm sure the both of you, Matthew and Robert, have great advice for this. So what we'll do is we'll open up the floor to Robert for like a 30-second to 1-minute overview on his best advice, and then we'll deep dive into the details after Matthew gives his overview. So Robert, would you mind kicking it off?
No, not at all. The first thing I would always say to everyone is get organized. Time management is a huge issue for startups. There's always more to do than there is time to do it in, and learning to prioritize tasks and not put so many in one day that you're never going to get them done. Whatever tool works for you. I mean, there's a million of them on the internet, but I don't really suggest one. It's more finding what fits you when you're choosing the tools. And the second part is the big part for me is control your costs. As a startup CEO, people are going to come at you from everywhere trying to sell you stuff. And what should cost you a nickel all of a sudden costs $1 because you don't know the difference. And you can eat up your startup capital very quickly. So those are my 2 big ones.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be too much time in the day for a startup CEO, and the cost, like you said, just spirals out of control. Sometimes you check your bank account, you're like, oops, I didn't know I'd spend that much this month, because it kind of adds up the whole month in an aggregate. So 2 very good points. Matthew, how about yourself?
I would say for me, 2 points. One would be know your lane. I think that was the biggest thing for myself starting. I didn't understand the lane that I was in, and I tried to do way too much more than what I knew. And so that would be one of the key of the 2. And then secondly, I would say be okay with being small starting out. Don't try and put yourself out there that you're a big, huge CEO person when you're just one person, maybe working out of a home office or a office space.
Right, so kind of being the jack of all trades, that common term, right? Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, for me with Crowdsourcia, it was difficult because I know that Crowdsourcia can help all types of companies, all types of projects, but you really have to find your lane, like you said, and just niche. So that's the reason why I chose to go after people who need pitch decks done first, even though it's just a small subset of the entire realm which Crowdsourcia could help. But you really have to niche yourself, find your processes, and then rinse and repeat. Going forward, I use the term rinse and repeat since you're so familiar with the dental industry. I hope that rung home a little bit.
Yeah.
For me, my advice is to know when to hire out. A lot of times, and this kind of goes back to what Robert said about managing your time. As a startup CEO, I find it that I have to do a little bit of everything. I'm in there in Photoshop doing work. I'm in there, doing back-end processes and setting up, HubSpot or some kind of CRM. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this? At what point did either of you two, decide to do your first hire and start outsourcing, or both of you not outsource? You do everything yourself?
I'll jump in. Usually when I get involved in these, particularly from an investor standpoint, and since everybody's usually in a capital raise mode at some point, this is something to address. We already identify what the team looks like and kind of lay out a plan in that regard too, that as soon as we reach this level, we're going to add this. Now, whether it's an outside contractor or service or whatever that looks like to address those needs. But we kind of have a timeline, a little bit of a Gantt chart with milestones that once this milestone's reached, we add this. The reason we do that, very frankly, is you're only as strong as your team and your weakest link in that whole cycle. And that could be anything from, a lot of entrepreneurs we deal with get behind on their corporate filings because they're just so busy doing other things where they could easily outsource that for not a lot of money and have those things taken care of. And they don't realize the danger that creates for their company. And that's just one of probably 100 examples I could throw out.
I definitely have experienced working with different companies starting up, and the first thing that we've always done is identify the role that I'm going to play because I'm so diverse in an array of things. I try and make sure I don't jump in to try and do everything.
Right.
So I'll say, hey, I'm going to jump in, and this is the role I'm going to play. If it's the web designer, this is my only role. Oh, you guys need this other service? Well, I got someone that we can outsource this to. And so I always try and be wise and making sure I don't jump in and try and be jack of all trades, as I said earlier.
Yeah. You don't want to step on anybody's toes once you outsource the work a little bit. Hey, Robert, let me ask you this question. This is kind of a sensitive subject for the startup CEO. Paying yourself, especially if you get VC money or angel money. At what point does a startup kind of feel, it's time to start paying the CEO or the president or some of the founders? And it's tough when you're starting out because you kind of want to roll every penny back into the company to make more money. Is there a balance there or a rule of thumb that you have for your people in the companies in your portfolio?
As long as it's reasonable, I think you do have to pay the bills. So putting that personal pressure of, you can't feed your kids or pay your car payment because you're putting everything into the business, that doesn't make sense because your focus is not going to be on the business. I mean, that pressure it creates is just is smart and unnecessary. Now, at the same time, as an investor, if they come to me and they ask for a very minimal salary, they can build in all the bonus structures they want. Once you hit this milestone, you get this in a bonus, or once you reach this, or a percentage of the earnings, not income, but earnings as a bonus. Depending on how the company's structured and what they do, those can always be different. But that's the way we look at it. I do not mind paying for performance. Everybody has to keep gas in the car and food on the table. That's a fact of life. So as long as it's reasonable, I really have no problem with it as an investor. But if they're looking for a guaranteed salary, that's of several $100,000 to start, that's not going to happen because I don't have a guaranteed salary as an investor. So
Right.
why would I do that for them?
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that bonus structure idea. Actually, I've heard a lot of startup CEOs say, "Oh, I'm going to start up with 5,000 a month or whatever, and then when I reach a certain level, go to 10,000 a month." But I like that with the milestones or basing your salary on your compensation on a certain level of sales rather than a timeline. So, Matthew, let me ask you in terms of work-life balance. I know there's not enough time in the day. You're trying to not be the jack of all trades. What's a good balance point for saying, you know what, it's time to stop for the day and go home to my family and go, play with my kids or walk my dog or spend some time with my wife or husband? So do you have an end point for your day, or is there is a certain rhythm for you that just tells you when it's time to go home and just kind of chill out?
I think my time frame I try and stick to, I try and end my day around 5 or 6. Sometimes that's very hard for me to do because if I am involved in a project and things are going well and I'm enjoying it and I'm not running into any issues, I'm one of those people I just like to keep working until I get it done. But I've learned though to manage my time, knowing when I'm going to start work in the morning, know when I'm going to end and go home because early when I started, I would just go, 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 think I got to return every phone call, email from a client immediately. And I found myself not being able to manage my time and losing time getting things done.
Yeah, inbox zero. That's my pet peeve. Like if I leave for the day and not get to inbox zero, it just weighs on my mind during the night. I just want to feel like I have to take care of it. There's just some point in your life where just let it go. It can wait a little bit, you know. So, Robert, same question to you. Work-life balance. How do you deal with that, especially with all the companies in your portfolio? I'm sure CEOs are calling you all the time, day and night, right?
The biggest one for me is, and I remember, and I think I got this, and if I'm using the wrong book, I apologize, but I believe it was the 5 Minute Manager. And I'm a big avid reader. I think there are some things out there. I'm not a big TV watcher, but my big thing there is don't allow a 5 minute meeting. Schedule everything so that that company gets my undivided attention for that period of time, because people will want 5 minutes of your time and then it'll end up being a half hour, an hour, and your day's gone before you know it.
Yeah. Yeah, scheduling is tough. Let's talk about that in terms of scheduling. Do you guys use like a Google Calendar, or how do you guys schedule with all these different people trying to, fill up your calendar? And at what point do you just say, you block off time for yourself? For me, I like to block off tasks that I know I need to do, even though they're not official meetings with other people. But I know if I don't block off those times, and it's just not going to get done, it's going to get delayed and be filled up by other people. Matthew, do you have some kind of calendar that you manage?
I do. I just use my calendar on my phone, and I just keep track of things that I need to get done, whether it's meeting with a client, finishing a task for a project. And the biggest thing within my time, I try and make sure I don't schedule meetings with people unless if I absolutely need to. I kind of got the idea from Shark Tank, Mark Cuban. He has this rule where he doesn't meet with people unless if it's an absolute need, and he tries to handle everything through email, and if it can't be resolved through email, then he'll go to a phone call. And so I try and do that because uh, like Robert said, you can lose time with people if you let them have 5 minutes. It turns into more than that. And so I found myself in those situations where I allow someone to have 5 minutes of my time, and an hour later I've realized, wow, I've lost all this time.
Yeah, and then you have to push back other meetings, right?
We have set meetings once a
Yeah,
week, actually.
once
I
a
don't
week.
even
Wow.
go once a month. Now, sometimes they're very short because it's more just an update, and they do email me the agenda and the updates, the things we need to talk about. We have a running agenda that we keep in the calendar and in a to-do list. We happen to use Teamwork, but there's 100 other softwares out there. So we have an ongoing checklist of things that need to happen that week. And I happen to use Google apps for business. It just seems like the easiest for me and my team. But again, there's 100 different solutions out there. So,
Yeah.
but that is by far the best way. We schedule time for each and every business, and I do, as Matthew mentioned, I do totally agree. We have an internal chat system too, that's part of Teamwork that we use. So it does. I can answer a question on that quickly, or answer an email a whole lot faster than I can a phone call. And
Sure.
sometimes with my travel schedule, I can answer an email at 2 in the morning when I finally get back to the hotel. So,
Nice.
kind of my rule on email, you mentioned this earlier, is I don't feel like I need to answer somebody immediately. I promise everybody I'll get back to them within one business day. There's usually nothing burning the house down that requires that immediate fast decision, because I found every time we make a fast decision, it's usually the wrong one.
Let's talk about education, though. It seems like as a CEO, you feel like you would be at the pinnacle and that you don't have any time for educating yourself or furthering your own knowledge on a particular topic. Do either of you still make it a point to go to conferences or trade shows, read a book? Robert, you mentioned you're a reader, or attend some kind of class to further education on maybe something that you need brushing up on, or some kind of new territory. I mean, I'm into digital marketing. There seems to be something new every 2 or 3 days that comes out that I haven't seen before. So I'm constantly educating myself. Matthew, how about yourself? Is there some kind of mandatory requirement you have set for yourself in terms of educating you and constantly learning?
I think the biggest, I'm always reading blogs and trying to see what's the latest trend in design. Is there something new that I'm missing that I'm not doing? I take time to get out and network with other entrepreneurs in my area and just see what they're doing that I'm not doing, and maybe learn some things, build relationships. And really, that's how I go about learning and educating myself.
Yeah, great. Robert, how about yourself? Do you encourage, in terms of you and the people in your portfolio, encourage education?
I do. Matter of fact, I almost require it. I'll even pay for certain conferences if I find that they're weak in different areas.
Wow.
Because I mean, I'm investing in the person more than the business sometimes, because without that person, there is no business a lot of times. So, for me personally, I use Audible. Again, there's 100 services out there. And when I'm doing my exercise and my jogs, I listen to books on tape a lot. Again, as Matthew said, to keep up with, the newest trends and what's going on, or, biographies of different people, things of that nature. And then I also cut out at least 30 minutes to an hour a day, usually towards the end of the day when I'm unwinding, just to get the juices flowing. And I kind of create a journal of ideas that come out of different reading blogs. I found YouTube videos. That's becoming even very popular too. You can go on and find just different things. Obviously, I have people I like to follow on there more than others, but occasionally I do a search to see just, what is popping up and how popular is this certain topic.
It's funny because you have the same process I do. I'm really into YouTube. I'd much rather watch a YouTube video than read a blog. Even though I have my 7 newsletters a day I like to read, and also Audible is a big one for me. Just like you, when I go to the gym, I'm popping on my headphones and I'm loading up an audiobook rather than listening to the same song, the same song, the same song, over and over again. It's like, why do that? It's like, just learn something. Now's your big chance, right? But along the lines of education is leadership. I've reviewed hundreds of resumes. I've hired dozens of people in my career, and one of the things that's always on a resume is I'm an excellent leader. It's like there's no certification that says you are a leader. So what is something that both of you have used to learn to become a leader? It just seems like kind of an overused buzzword, and it's so important. I was in the Army for 8 years. I definitely took a ton of leadership classes, but those people who have never taken a class on leadership, who have never really read anything on leadership, they put it on their resume that they're excellent leaders, and it seems to me like an overused buzzword. Matthew, do you have any thoughts on how to learn to become a leader?
I think one of the biggest things for someone to learn how to become a leader is to watch other leaders. I don't think it's something that you can say you do.
Right.
It's really something I think you have to become, and you become that by watching other people. I know for myself, people would always say, "Oh, are you a leader?" And I would never say yes, because I always felt like, well, I don't want to be one of those people who just says I'm a leader, but I really have no clue what that means to lead.
Right.
And I realized that until you have people following you and looking up to you, regardless, that doesn't just make you a leader. It's more than that. It's what are you putting back into those people? And so I found myself the best way to become a leader was just simply sit down with other entrepreneurs like myself that just wanted to learn and just share with them the knowledge that I had. And I found that made me a leader.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things that I'd like to put forward here is that being a leader doesn't mean you're a leader in everything. It doesn't make you a great manager. I feel that I'm a great leader in a couple things, and I'm a terrible leader in other things. So you just kind of learn a little bit more about yourself and be cognizant of what you're great at leading and what you're great at following at. It's okay to be a follower. Just because you say you're a leader doesn't mean you're a leader across everything you do. Robert, how about yourself?
I go back to your example. I mean, I was a security specialist with the Navy for years and learned a lot of leadership skills there. But one thing we do when we invest is we also do a little bit of a personality profile, because there are different leadership styles.
Yes.
And it very much goes by your personality. And the biggest one for us is teaching them how to train their staff properly so that you're not micromanaging, but you still have checks and balances for whatever requirement there is, whether it's an outside contractor, a direct employee, or whatever that situation may be. The big part of it is, how do you hold them accountable but not drive them crazy by being over their shoulder the whole time? Because at that point, you're really not leading, you're doing it yourself. You're just using them as a robot to do it.
I've got a leadership conference coming up this month, and I just attended one. And it seems like every time I attend one, there's a new process or a new way of thinking or a new class that really captures my attention. Leadership is one of those things that a CEO should never stop learning about because it affects so many aspects of their business. And I've seen great entrepreneurs that are terrible leaders not make it in a business that they should have killed it on, and vice versa. So being a great leader is a valuable asset for any CEO across any industry, even any manager, to be honest with you. So, if I recap this entire show right now, I'd say 2/3 of it was on productivity and time management. So all of you Ask the Crowd nation out there, all you listeners, and you really want to start thinking about time management and productivity management. That's a huge part of being a startup CEO. I'd like to thank both of you for being on the show today. Robert, can you give a recap on how our listeners can reach you?
One of the easiest is either my website, robertritch.com, and Ritch is RITCH, or you can reach me at robertritch, that's my Twitter handle.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Matthew, how about yourself? How can our listeners reach you?
They can reach me at my website, matthewjthorpe.com, and my Facebook, my Twitter, all that's on there.
Great. And Thorpe is with an E, correct?
It is.
All right. Thanks very much. That's going to do it today, folks. Thank you for all your time and wisdom today, guys. This has been another fantastic episode of Ask the Crowd. For more expert advice, head on over to crowdsourcia.com, and be sure to go to crowdsourcia.com/ask the crowd to be notified when another episode airs. Until next time, everyone, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep profiting.
The crowd. Ask the crowd. Ask the crowd.